There are mornings when you wake up and feel like the air in the room is different. Not colder, not warmer, just empty. For Ethan, it wasn't just a feeling. It was a brutal truth that had just arrived. That morning, the silence in his house grew unbearably heavy. Heavier than shouting, heavier than tears, because it was the sound of an ending. Sofia, his wife, the woman who had built everything he called life alongside him, was gone. There hadn't been a heated argument the night before to foreshadow it. No slammed doors, not even a bitter goodbye. Just a neatly folded piece of paper on the kitchen table beside his half-finished cup of coffee. She didn't leave an explanation for 10 years of marriage, just a confession. 7 words, written. In her soft, familiar handwriting, but carrying a merciless weight. I'm sorry, I can't anymore. Can't anymore. Those words looped endlessly in Ethan's head. Couldn't endure, couldn't love, or simply couldn't stay. But the harshest truth wasn't in that note. It lived in the rooms down the hall, because Sofia hadn't just left behind a husband. She'd abandoned an entire universe she herself had helped create. She left behind Rowan, their eldest at just 10 years old, an old soul in a young boy's body, already too used to reading the emotions of grown-ups. She left behind Mason and Zoe, the inseparable twins whose world still revolved around who got the last bite of cake, and she left behind the youngest two. Tiny lives who could barely form the word mom. Children whose earliest memories would now be haunted by her absence. 5 children. 5 fragile hearts, suddenly left in the middle of a storm they didn't even understand. From that moment on, Ethan's life was no longer his own. It became a blurry cycle, survival on autopilot, fueled by cheap coffee and an iron will that refused to collapse. Grief was a luxury he couldn't afford, because every morning, 5 small reasons woke up, needing to be fed, clothed, and kept safe in a world that had suddenly become terrifying. Each day began at 5 a.m. in the stillness of dawn. He'd sit alone in the kitchen, listening to the coffee maker crackle and sputter. Those were the only peaceful minutes he had. Minutes to remind himself to breathe, to keep going. He learned how to braid Zoe's hair, his rough, calloused builders, hands fumbling with her silky strands. He learned how to referee Mason's fights. He learned to read bedtime stories in a cheerful voice, even when his chest felt like it was caving in. And he learned how to lie. "Daddy, is Mommy coming home today?" Zoe would ask, her clear little eyes full of hope, and he'd smile, the smile he'd practiced in the mirror. "She's just busy, sweetheart. She'll be back soon." Every lie was a small knife to his heart. But he told them anyway because the truth was too cruel for such innocent souls. By day, he buried himself at the construction site. The pounding hammers, the screech of saws, they became his anesthesia. Out there, life was simple. Lay a brick, pour the concrete, build homes, sturdy enough for other families. The cruelest irony of all. But at night, when the house fell into silence, when 5 steady breaths rose and fell in the rooms around him, that was when his demons came out. He'd sit alone in the dark living room, staring at the wedding photo on the wall. He tried to remember the joy of that day, but it felt distant, like a dream that belonged to someone else. He didn't cry, not because he was strong, but because he feared if he started, he might never stop. They weren't just a family trying to survive anymore. They had become an army, a small battalion of tiny soldiers fighting an invisible enemy called absence. And Ethan, no matter how exhausted he was, no matter how much he sometimes wanted to quit, had to keep standing, because he was their general. A reluctant general, learning to lead in the ruins of the once happy empire that used to be his family. Time is a strange kind of medicine. It doesn't heal wounds. It just teaches you how to live with the scars. 10 years had passed. 10 years of rushed breakfasts, exhausted nights, and countless firsts Ethan had to witness alone. The first time Zoe rode a bike, the first time Mason scored a goal, and the first time Rowan opened his college acceptance letter. 10 years, long enough for the children to forget their mother's scent, long enough for Ethan to grow used to sleeping alone in a wide bed. Their house was no longer a wreck patched together. It had become a fortress built on perseverance, laughter, and silent tears. Ethan had done it. He had turned chaos into a new order. An order that belonged only to the 6 of them. And then, on a gray Tuesday afternoon, the past came knocking. It didn't arrive like a storm. It slipped in quietly, tucked into the mailbox, wedged between bills and flyers. A plain white envelope, with no return address. But Ethan didn't need one. He recognized that handwriting instantly, the soft curves that had once written love notes on birthday cards, and the same hand that had written the 7 words that ended his old life. Sofia. He held the letter like a burning coal. Part of him wanted to tear it apart, throw it away, pretend it never existed. But another part, the fragile sliver of curiosity that had survived all these years, wouldn't let him. That letter haunted him like a ghost for days. He tucked it into his jacket pocket, feeling its weight with every move. It was there when he fixed a customer's car, there when he stirred a pot of stew, a constant reminder that the fortress he'd built might have a crack. But life never brings just one test at a time. It was as if the universe wanted to see how much Ethan could bear. A few days later, the future came knocking too. Frank, his old boss, now running a large auto shop, called him in. Frank had watched Ethan's journey since the collapse of his marriage. He didn't waste time. He laid a contract on the desk. Shop manager, Frank said, his voice steady with trust. Double the pay, full benefits for all 6 of you. You've earned this, Ethan. I've never seen anyone work harder or more reliably than you. Ethan stared at the contract. The numbers danced in front of his eyes. This wasn't just a job, this was a way out. It was Rowan's college tuition, without loans. It was a new family car that wouldn't die on the highway. It was summer vacations he'd never dared to promise. It was security. It was recognition for a decade of silent sacrifice. The world was handing him a golden ladder to climb. But then Frank added, "Of course, there'll be heavier responsibilities. Some late nights, weekend trips. You'll have to give more of your time to the shop." And suddenly, that golden ladder looked terrifying. To climb it, would he have to let go of what mattered most? He had spent 10 years filling the void Sofia left behind. Was he about to create a new void himself? To become the kind of father who showed up only in paychecks, not at the dinner table? That night, the house was quiet. Ethan sat across from Rowan at the dinner table, 2 invisible letters between them. One from the past, one from the future. "I've been offered a new job," he said softly, watching his eldest son's face. Rowan's eyes lit up. "That's amazing, Dad. You deserve it, but..." "It would mean I'd be home less," Ethan admitted, his voice uncertain. He needed advice, but feared the answer. Rowan was silent for a long time. The 18-year-old who had carried more than his share of responsibility looked him straight in the eye. Then he smiled, a smile both proud and quietly resigned. "We'll be okay, Dad. You always figure it out." A simple sentence. But for Ethan, it was both the greatest encouragement and the heaviest burden. You always figure it out. It was complete trust, but also a reminder of everything Rowan had already sacrificed. Late that night, when the house was asleep, Ethan sat alone in his room. He knew he couldn't avoid it anymore. He pulled out Sofia's letter. His hands no longer trembled. Instead, a cold, steady calm took over. He tore open the envelope. It was time to face the ghost from 10 years ago, so he could decide the path for the 10 years ahead. Ethan opened the letter. Sofia's delicate handwriting appeared before him, not a direct apology, but a carefully painted story. She wrote about 10 years of being lost, about finding herself, about youthful mistakes. She claimed she had changed, that she had grown. And now, her heart longed to reunite with the children she had left behind. She wanted a chance, a meeting, a new beginning. The words sounded beautiful. Moving, even. 10 years ago, Ethan might have believed them. He might have cried. He might have hoped. But 10 years is a long time. Long enough for a naive man to die and for a hardened father to be born. The Ethan of today no longer read what was written on the page. He read what lay between the lines. And there, he saw no remorse. He saw a hollow, suspicious emptiness. Not a single question about the children. Not a single thought for how they were living or what they might need. The entire letter revolved around her. Her feelings, her journey, her desires. A cold unease seeped into Ethan's chest. This wasn't a mother trying to return home. This felt like a stranger scouting the terrain. The next morning, he didn't respond to the letter. Instead, he did something he never thought he would do. He opened his computer and typed Sofia's full name into the search bar. Sometimes, the digital world exposes truths more raw than real life, and he didn't have to search long. Just a few clicks, and there it was. A public profile. Photos of Sofia smiling brightly with strangers at glittering parties. She didn't look like someone carrying guilt, but her posts told a different story. Vague laments about life's challenges, pleas for positive energy. And then, there it was. The knot that tied the whole play together. A link to a GoFundMe page. The title read, "Starting Over from Nothing." Ethan read every word of the description. Sofia spun a tragic tale of being deceived, losing everything, facing homelessness. She begged for compassion, for a second chance. A second chance. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He compared the post date to the day he received the letter. Just days apart, suddenly everything became terrifyingly clear. She wasn't coming back to family. She was searching for a backup plan, a lifeline. And Ethan, along with his 5 children, were the lifeline. Rage erupted inside him, hot, violent, but it quickly cooled into something heavier. Disappointment, crushing disappointment. She hadn't just abandoned them once, she was preparing to abandon them again in a different way. But Ethan wouldn't let that happen. Not this time. He would not fight in the dark again. He needed light. He needed truth. He called a private investigator, a man recommended by friends for his discretion and efficiency. The conversation was brief. "I want everything," Ethan said, his voice steady, almost frightening. "Finances, work, relationships, no speculation, just the truth." The truth arrived within 48 hours, bound in a brown folder. And it was worse than Ethan had imagined. Piled up debt, small lawsuits, a spotty work history. And the final detail struck the hardest blow. Sofia had mentioned him, and the kids, to a few acquaintances, saying her ex-husband was successful, and she believed he would do the right thing for their children. Do the right thing, Ethan. Closed the folder. Every emotion in him dissolved, leaving only a granite resolve. He knew exactly what had to be done. He called Sofia. On the other end, her voice sounded surprised at first, then quickly shifted into a falsely cheerful tone. "Ethan, I knew you'd call." "Central Park," Ethan cut her off coldly. "Saturday morning, 10 o'clock. If you want to see the kids, this is your only chance." He wasn't arranging this meeting to give Sofia an opportunity. He was doing it for his children. They deserved a clear ending. They needed to see, with their own eyes, the woman who had given them life, not through faded memories or their father's lies, but as she truly was now. And more importantly, Ethan needed Sofia to see. He needed her to stand face to face with the fortress he had built over 10 years, the fortress made from the very bricks she had thrown away. That Saturday would not be a reunion. It would be a confrontation, a silent battle that would decide everything. That Saturday morning, Ethan didn't wake the kids with his usual cheerful voice. He stepped quietly into each room, laid a gentle hand on their shoulders, and whispered, "It's time." No one asked what he meant. They understood. The air inside. The car on the way to the park was heavy, almost suffocating. No music, no playful arguments, only the steady hum of the engine and the quiet breathing of 6 people about to confront a ghost. Through the rearview mirror, Ethan studied his children. Rowan sat upright, staring out the window, jaw clenched tight. Mason and Zoe sat pressed together, hands locked, silently sharing courage. Even the 2 youngest, usually bundles of restless energy, were completely still. They weren't riding, with excitement. They were marching with their commander into a battle they didn't fully understand, but they trusted him. Sofia was already there, perched on a stone bench by the lake. She looked anxious, fidgeting with her hair, checking her watch. When Ethan's car pulled up, she sprang to her feet, forcing a bright smile. But the moment Ethan and all 5 children stepped out, standing shoulder to shoulder in silence, her smile crumbled. This wasn't the scene she had imagined. She had expected tears, hugs, at the very least, curiosity. What she got instead was a fortress, a wall built from 5 children standing firm behind their father, their eyes not filled with anger, but with something colder, distance. "My babies." Sofia's voice trembled. "Look how much you've grown." She tried to step closer, but Rowan moved forward. Just one step, small but decisive, drawing an invisible boundary. "What do you want?" Rowan asked flatly, his voice steady. Not a child's voice, but a man's. Sofia froze. "What do I... Rowan, I'm your mother." "My mother hasn't been here for 10 years, he cut her off. "You're Sofia, so what do you want from us?" Her words faltered. She began repeating the story from her letter. Hardships, regret, second chances. But spoken out loud, they sounded hollow, weak. They bounced against the wall of silence. Her children held between them and fell apart. Ethan stood there, saying nothing. He didn't need to. His children were fighting their own battle now, and he had armed them with the only weapons that mattered: truth and self-respect. The meeting ended in awkward silence. No hugs, no promises. When they turned to walk away, Sofia called after them, voice cracking with desperation. "Please, just give me a chance." But not one of them looked back. That night, when Ethan was certain the kids were safely tucked in, he knew there was one last thing left to do. Not around the dinner table, but in the living room, beneath the photos hanging on the walls, in the space where they had laughed, watched movies, built memories together. He didn't start with Sofia's letter. He placed the private investigator's file on the coffee table. "I want you to know the truth," he said, his voice steady but full of love. "All of it. Not so you'll hate your mother, but so you'll understand. And so you'll be free." He let them read for themselves, page by page. He saw confusion flicker across Mason's face, anger spark in Rowan's eyes, and then a single tear slide down Zoe's cheek. But it wasn't a tear of pain, it was clarity. Finally, the pieces fit. Their mother's abandonment had never been their fault. It had never been about them. That was the first blow, the blow of truth. But Ethan knew, to protect them forever, he needed to deliver the final strike. He disappeared into his study and returned with another envelope, thicker, made of worn leather. He laid it on the table right beside the thin file. "When your mother left," he began, his voice low, "she gave up her role in your lives emotionally. But the law can be complicated. For years, I feared the past might come back and try to steal from me the most precious thing I have. I couldn't let that happen." He opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of papers, stamped in bold red. He placed them on top. "I wanted to eliminate every risk. I wanted to make sure no one, no force on this earth, could ever tear us apart again. Our bond had to be permanent, unbreakable." Then he lifted his eyes, meeting each of theirs in turn, those 5 souls who meant everything to him. His voice wavered, heavy with 10 years of love and sacrifice. So 3 years ago, I made it official. I legally adopted every one of you. Silence. A silence heavier than the one that had filled that fateful morning 10 years ago. But this time, it wasn't the silence of loss. It was the silence of awe. You are mine, Ethan continued, his voice shaking now. By law, by love, in every way that matters. What we have, it's forever. Nothing can take that away. And then the silence broke. Not with words, but with tears. Rowan, his strong, stoic son, crumpled and wept openly for the first time in 10 years. Zoe threw herself into Ethan's arms, burying her face against his chest. Mason sat motionless, tears streaming, but with a smile tugging at his lips. Sofia had left behind bricks of chaos. Ethan had picked up each one, not to patch the past, but to build a foundation. A foundation so strong, no storm could ever shake it. That night, in the warmth of their living room, 6 souls were no longer survivors. They were a family. Forever. After that night, something truly shifted inside Ethan's home. Not a loud, dramatic change, but a quiet transformation. It was as if the last storm had finally passed, leaving the sky clearer and more peaceful than ever before. The invisible weight they had carried for 10 long years, the weight of abandonment, of unanswered questions, of vague, misplaced guilt, had been lifted. The truth, though painful, carried a strange kind of freedom. And those adoption papers, they weren't just a legal form, they were a declaration, a promise that they belonged. Together. Not by chance of blood, but by the deliberate choice of love. In the days that followed, laughter rang louder inside the house. Rowan began speaking about college plans with an excitement Ethan hadn't seen in years. Mason signed up for the basketball team, standing taller, no longer so timid. Zoe filled the house with her singing again as she practiced for dance. Even the 2 youngest seemed lighter, racing through the halls, filling the home with the sweet chaos Ethan cherished most. A week later, one final letter from Sofia arrived. This time it was short. The handwriting no longer tried to impress. It carried only the truth. She admitted everything: her despair, her debts, her selfish plan. She wrote that the meeting in the park had forced her to realize something. She hadn't just lost her rights as a mother. She had become a stranger to her own children. At the very end, she wrote, "You've built them a good life. I won't disturb you again." Ethan read the letter, then quietly placed it in an old box with other relics of a marriage long gone. He felt no triumph, no sorrow, just closure. The door to the past, which had cracked open for a brief, painful moment, was now shut, locked. This time, for good. Months later, as Ethan and Rowan sat together reviewing college forms, the boy suddenly paused, looked at his father, and said softly, "Dad, you saved us." Ethan shook his head, a warm smile spreading across his face. He placed a hand on Rowan's shoulder, the boy now nearly his equal in height. "No, son, we saved each other." And that was the truth. The children had saved him from drowning, in his own grief. They had given him purpose, a reason to wake up each morning and fight. And he had given them stability, safety, and a love that never wavered. Together, they were a closed circle, a living ecosystem of protection and strength. Family isn't always formed by the people who give you life. More often, it's formed by the people who teach you how to live. It isn't built on picture-perfect moments frozen in frames. It's built on thousands of imperfect ones. Burned dinners, long nights of homework, tight hugs after nightmares. It's built on presence. Ethan hadn't just raised 5 children. He had given them the most valuable lesson of all. That true, love isn't a fleeting feeling or a promise wrapped in pretty words. It's a construction, a lifelong work that demands patience, sacrifice, and daily commitment, especially on the hardest days. It is choosing to stay when everyone else has already walked away. A foundation isn't something you can see, but it determines everything that stands above it. For 10 years, Ethan had been quietly building that foundation for his children. A foundation of love, trust, and dignity. And from it, they would be free to build towers of their own, tall, unshakable, reaching for whatever dreams they dared to chase. So, what truly makes a family? Is it the people who share the same blood, or the ones willing to bleed for each other? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so we can continue exploring stories that change the way we see life. Thanks for watching.